Here we are. I told Cody I would do this really nonchalant, and I wanted to scream. This is the Low Back Ability Podcast. Today is a special back breakthrough episode. We're gonna do these ever so frequent of real conversations with people that really struggle deep with their back, and they either found some gems and some progress through the program, the Low Back Ability program, or something parallel. Basically, anyone with a great story that has that like fire and light in them while they're having it. Let's get it out to people who really need to hear it, whether it's inspo or insight. And Cody is actually super, super resourceful. He's a leader in our low back ability program. And if you're in the program, you've probably seen him in the chats. You probably heard from him. He makes good content. It's Instagram's Cody Horn, right? You
Yeah.
got the tag. Nice, man. So, yeah, thank you for coming. Short notice, 1 week. We decided to start doing this little series. We're gonna get it into every detail of your life right now. But yeah, dude, glad we could chat. Is there anything off the bat that you want to get off your chest before I interview you through this?
No, not nothing in particular. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of the LBA in so much as that, I've started to be inspired beyond the exercises and that I want to just spread the word. I had that aha moment watching some of your content where I
Hmm.
was like, this is the missing link.
Yeah.
Um, as you know, I've worked through the program pretty consistently and it's brought me to a point where I've sort of taken a lot of your passion and just been like, we got to get this out there. We got to help everybody we can after
Yeah.
what I went through, and how I feel now,
Yeah.
um, in whatever way. Just train the low back.
Amen. That's the first obvious start. And both of us understand this is a good combo because I think you and I are pretty similar in our open-mindedness to knowing this shit is not that simple, you know? But the simple things are simple, which is not training your low back your entire life is not a great thing to have on your side if you're trying to make sure one, you don't get back injuries, and two, you don't stay in them forever. So I guess it'd be useful to start on your stats. Let's start on your MRI stats so people have context what you came in with a few months ago. This is not just basic testimonial when Cody came, he had, but really let people know your current situation diagnostically.
Yeah, I mean, which one, right? I think I got my first MRI in like 2012, and it was like nice, good, blocky vertebrae, little disc bulge. And I'm like, how is this thing causing the pain I have? And it was like full left leg sciatic. But at that point, it's like I'm in the gym doing like team training for hockey, lots of deadlifts, lots of bench press. I won like an award for most dedicated lifter sophomore year. And I'm like,
Makes sense.
yeah, and I'm like, whoa, man, like, why does my back hurt this bad? Like, I'm being recognized for my dedication in the gym, right? And and looking back on it, I had this like kyphotic hold, like forward shoulders, and at the time it was like, man, I just don't know what's going on. But looking back on it, it was like a huge aha moment where if I had low back ability at the time, I could have avoided the 2016 MRI, which showed much more compressed vertebral segments and a lot more herniations on both sides than the 2018 MRI, which showed a replication of what I had on the left, on the right. And it was sort of just like the 6 to 9 week PT protocol, symptoms subside, and I go back to doing stupid stuff. Teenager, I'm drinking, I'm partying, skiing like a madman. I'm from the mountains, playing hockey, lots of bending and twisting, um, and kind of considering this like rule of specificity in sports. Like the more I do these things, the more tolerant I'll become to them, which is a principle that we focus on, but it's not necessarily like your back hurts playing hockey, play more hockey so that you can, you know, be tolerant of the movements. So it's a slower integration than that. And then my most recent MRI, um, April 2020 was like a catastrophic Jenga tower. The surgeons are like, I don't know how you're walking in here. And I kind of agreed. I was like, believe me, it took a lot to get in here. Um, but I forget what they call it, but it's essentially where you have the cubes of the vertebrae and the tops of them are just like sunken down. The edges are super jagged. And
Yeah.
so when you think of like the pathology of that, it's like when you go into flexion, a sharp vertebrae hits your disc and, it's pushing it all sorts of places. And so I sort of got to a point where most movements, I was like, oh, if I go further, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have a serious herniation. So you add that with like a night of dehydration, waking up, like knowing you're vulnerable and doing a simple movement, and it's like what you see on your chair clip of your Instagram
Where I get
post
sniped.
where you're like, oh, I'm done.
Yeah.
And everyone who's had back pain sort of knows what follows that, which is survival. You're crooked, your both legs are numb and burning, you got drop foot. For me, I was like meditating just to pee. So it was tough, man. And to loop this back to keep it topical, my MRI looks the same right now.
Yeah.
And I'm
He's
dwarf.
not the same. Yeah. And you're not the same.
Well, then I'm not the same. I might as well not have an injured back for 95% of the stuff I want to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is insane. And let's run through real quick. How many surgeries did you have? One?
I had two surgeries and then like a
One.
corrective framinotomy. And then, I say 8
Injections?
injections, but it was as many as I needed to continue playing college hockey, skiing competitively. It
Yeah.
was like get an injection so you can maintain
Yeah.
and again.
So he's had corticosteroids, he's had PRP,
Yep.
uh, different surgeries, different modalities, operations. Probably tried all the conservative stuff too. And then he found BBB and he's completely fixed. And that's the episode. And we thank you for listening. uh,
Well,
yeah, man. No, it's crazy the journey you've had. And the fact that that's why I give such a you know, within our community, especially early on, I didn't know if I wanted to have a group chat. I'm like, everyone's going to share their MRIs. They're just going to start talking about, pain med prescription, comparing diagnoses. But it was one of the best things I did because we can only really talk to the level of our experience. And what I think I've experienced that I best help people with is, yeah, the basic understandings of the back, the basic anatomy things, like as a basic educator, but then a very hardcore empathizer of like the hopelessness, the lost feelings, the confusion. And that goes very far for people. But man, you've got something that some people say I fake my story. Some people say I don't have disc herniations or what's my MRI. Dude, if I'm walking around like you and I get to the point where I'm at now and you do Jefferson curls, nobody can tell me anything for the rest of my life about what's possible or not. Because you see it all the time, like in messages I get. Well, it's great, you healed yourself, but I have a fused disc or I have osteophytes, those bony ridges and growths. I have modic changes. And I'm like, uh, I got a guy on my team, actually. It's like the Avengers of the injures. I'm like, I got somebody who could top that, no problem. And he's back to doing more. And the magic isn't, I'm not saying it's all BBB. It's not at all. Cody is a specimen of like resilience and awareness and has tried everything under the sun and really did the work. Like you said, meditating to pee is probably not a joke. Like it really took mind, body, spirit. And he's also very deep in training that, I could call out any probably school of thought as a trainer and he would know who I'm talking about, what I'm talking about, and has tried a lot of it. And that's very common for someone desperately seeking answers. They almost become an expert, maybe without the credentials, kind of like me at this point. All mine are expired. And, so you're an incredible resource for people. I think the more people get to know your story, which I've been trying to help you and push to make the content that you're doing, and it's been good so far, really good, and you're only going to get better, is because people just don't even think that's possible. Like you're doing seated good mornings again. You started Jefferson curls and realized I need more back extension work. I need to go slower, but he's in the game of back training pretty far. And there's a lot of people with one disc bulge, nothing else considered significant on the MRI. Tons of, I'm sure, muscular imbalances and neurological things. That's all there. But like people that don't have the same starting point and they can't do what you can do. They can't even start some of the training. And so, you have validity I don't have, which is why this podcast episode is really helpful and cool. And so I think one thing we covered would be really cool to go through is I'm glad you put it in the phases of 2012, first issue, and like, oh, that sucks. So much pain though. It was like, how the hell is that possible?
Yeah.
It subsided, it eased, you probably found relief, over time, which I did too. And then the second big one, progressiveness of it getting worse. Now we're entering the loop. And then it got worse and worse and worse. If you could coach 2012 Cody at this exact day, how, because there's nothing wrong with the one disc bulge. Like this is called life. That is called life. The rest is called hell. It didn't need to turn into hell. So how would you have helped Cody go through life and become wise to the back without having to go through hell?
You know, there's really maybe no way.
Damn,
But I
you're too
wish,
much like me.
right. But it's funny because like it's like when you're a teenager, you first experience pain, I think, like emotional pain, and you start to think, I know everything. Nobody is experiencing what I'm experiencing. You have suffering without empathy, right? And so it's this like mindset where since you know everything, like you must be defective.
Mm,
Um, and so it's like it's a path of wisdom, I think, that is almost unteachable and that makes people like us who've gone through such trials and tribulations with this stuff so much stronger emotionally at the end. However, in a very practical sense, to answer your question, I would say get on the damn back extension. Like that's sort of the key component there when you can distill this entire program down to one thing. It's train the low back, don't preserve the low back, right? Um, and that was always such a taboo concept for me. I remember my high school hockey team trainer showing me a deadlift, and I had a little bit of information at the time from, I think it was Athlean X, Jeff Cavalier.
shout
Just
out. Go.
shout out to you, Jeff. Um,
He's
anyway,
got good info. No matter which direction this point's about to go, he's had some good info.
I
I
had
don't know.
some good info, but I remember him going into detail about how you should be isolating the glutes and the hamstrings in deadlifts. And my high school trainer, I go, hey, what is this? Sort of testing him. I'm like, what does this train? And he points to my low back muscles. And I immediately was like, wrong, wrong, man, because you should not be training the low back because mine hurts right now. And
Yeah,
if that's what you think this exercise is doing, then I should not do deadlifts. And
yeah, dude.
I'm, 17 years old in the gym, full of testosterone, thinking I'm already on the wrong path. So I
Yeah,
was sort of like misguided and knew I was a bit misguided at the time. Um, but didn't have the correct roadmap to begin building a structure of confidence in something like the deadlift. So I
yep.
knew right there that like I needed the Brendan Backstrom Instagram page to show me just like the little tip off the diving board that I needed to jump into the pool, right? Because it just wasn't there in my traditional strength training protocols.
Yeah, dude.
So, yeah, I mean that's breaking this down to just the basic simple thing of how to swallow your ego, how to not necessarily tame the ego, but partner with it so that you can be the highest expression of yourself in a super, super boring, lame movement, the highly regressed split squat, whatever you want to call it. So,
Right.
I mean, that was half of it is like pushing huge plates with a missing Jenga piece. I'll keep folding back to that metaphor.
It's a good one. Yeah, dude. So the basics, while you were out experiencing this even as an athlete, I was only going through the exercise science route to fix my problem. So I studied it in school, and then I was a trainer just to make money while also learning more. And it was a cool gig to work with people. So from like 2016, starting to be a trainer, if anyone's a trainer, there's a lot of subcategories of training, and you might fall into functional training or kettlebell stuff. And I learned from Mike Boyle and Mark Verstegen with Exos, RKC stuff, and Pavel Dusan, like all these sort of
Talk about
functional.
shout outs, bro.
Yeah, I'll just give them all out because some people may relate or not. They're
Yeah.
not all good shout outs. I'm not, there's no, some of those people actively don't like me anymore because I've grown on social media and I go promote stuff they don't. So just, it is what it is. I learned from them and it was good stuff to, I don't know if it's good stuff, but that's where I was coming from in training. And basically that matched with traditional like ACSM, these very standard certifications for personal training. And then in school, learning kinesiology and how you should train and whether more, I also worked at a physical therapy clinic. From all angles, this thing lined up everywhere. You should not train your low back. Clinical to academic to professional and as an athlete. Everything was do not train your low back. And so when I would train somebody, if we did even deadlifts or RDLs, we would have them go through and they would do a set and they would train their deadlift. And I would sit there as the trainer with my arms crossed, very professional, very smart on this side. And I say, where did you feel that? A little bit in the hamstrings, glutes. Say, yeah, my hamstring glutes. A little bit in the low back. And I'm like, oh, you felt it in your low back. You felt deadlifts in your low back, a
Yeah.
back supporting movement. You felt it. That's a problem. You did something wrong with your form. You need to move your chin 2 degrees. That's the problem. And it was just so avoidant to the idea, hey, maybe it's not only feel your back or never feel your back. Maybe it's a part of the body that has musculature that's adaptive. And so the funniest thing, I was dead set on becoming a pro athlete and I would obsess over the physique I wanted. I remember writing down, I'd think about it, I'm like, I want big quads, I want big glute, super big glutes, big quads, like hamstrings. And I'm like imagining the body would have ended up if I got my wish, massive stuff, and then tiny little low back with no erectors. And I never knew some of the best sprinters that I looked up to had jacked backs. They just
That
never.
maybe.
Dude, I got this picture on my wall.
You're right. You've showed it to me multiple times. I
I got
actually,
it printed, laminated. I have
funny.
Olympic athletes' low backs now because I'm never gonna forget. This dude may not do back extensions, but he has a freaking back. And I'm like, this is what they don't tell you because, it's the culture of training misleads us.
Well, and it's funny, you think about the aesthetics of lifting or whatever, and like everyone does it, like be in your bathroom mirror and do, check
Sure.
yourself out. And I've started to just like, let's see how those trap threes are looking.
Oh
And like
yeah.
just getting them to fire upon waking up is a task in and of itself. And so, yeah,
Dude, yeah, I check my every video. How do I look in that? I'm checking my traps and my rec fem, my rectus femoris. I'm looking for that thigh bulge. Like that's it. And it's funny how what you pay attention to, what you put intent towards, you're gonna get better results in training. And then if you make a red flag around the sensation of your low back, well, then of course you're not gonna probably have good mind muscle connection because you're avoiding that. And I just got a text. I hope he doesn't mind. The surgeon I'm friends with in New York City is on the program, and he just texted me saying, "Did some back extensions last night. The pump feels so good." He's
nice.
cut. He's cut into hundreds of spines. He just felt his first back pump.
Hell yeah.
I don't know what that'll change for him, but it's like most people have literally never felt that, no matter what your background is. And Cody said it right. It's oversimplified and we have to have some oversimplified thing because we can't answer it's 1,000 of the questions that don't really matter. We get a lot of those in the chat. We get a lot of teenagers, and everything you're saying we see every day of the confusion. But the back extension is as much of a teacher as it is as a tool because you're going to learn if you're avoidant, you're going to learn if you're intolerant, you're going to learn if you spasm and you're overactive when you contract. You're also going to learn, oh, do I naturally hinge or can I allow the segment by segment control? You can find big weakness or one, you feel good except that one position in that one spot. And all of that are non-surgical ways to learn and like non-MRI diagnostic ways. And, that's the massive part of the program. And the funny thing is, people be like it's just one exercise. It's like, no, there's like five different exercises within the exercise. There's holds, there's reps, there's single leg, there's two legs, there's loaded. Do you want to hinge? Do you want to round? We're about it all. And I've grown really like kind of distasted, like just not I don't see the place anymore for only do this exercise like this. Only, back extension with a hinge back. And because then what did we used to call the, I think you were the same when we would train back extensions, because we actually would back in our
Hip
strength
hinge.
days. We called it a hip extension. That's
Yeah.
what I call
Yeah, hip extension, hip hinge. Yeah, well, it's interesting, man, because you talk about the back extension and that surgeon getting a pump, and I it just makes me think about my first 3 reps. I'll do an iso hold for, what feels good, and then go into reps. And the first three, I think about this concept of like energy or prana or blood circulation, like where you have kinks in the chain and that energy just wants to
it.
flow through, right? And it's not flowing through the low back for those first 3 to 5 reps. Then all of a sudden, oof, and that's why I call it the juice. It's like, all right, now we're flowing, right? And to get that level of relief prior to training these exercises in earnest, I spent $150 on acupuncture, $50 on chiropractic, add in another insurance claim for PT. Then I go do cupping. Then I'd sit in an ice plunge. I'm like, hey man, like the energy's flowing now. The comparable time and financial investment for me now is 3 to 5 back extension reps. And it's like, and
Yeah.
obviously it took me a long time to get to that point, and I'm doing Patrick steps, Pelican steps, whatever you want to call it, warming up, split squats. I'm getting my body right. And so like, yeah, maybe the investment's a little larger, but $500 every month, like
Yeah,
huge trade-off.
yeah. ROI is much better. I think you said Peliquin, not Poliquin. Someone's gonna be like, it's Poliquin.
Oh, I'm talking about a different guy.
Yeah, he's talking about the penguin steps. So you haven't seen it,
That's right.
clearly. It's
Well, that's
impressive.
how I used to walk.
Exactly. And so Cody, I'm a listener. It's my first time hearing low back ability. I'm kind of sketched out. He's too young. He seems like he has a weird haircut. I don't really like the way he talks. But I'm here on this podcast and I'm open-minded. This guy Cody just said cupping, acupuncture, this, that, this, that. I just do back extension reps. So now I'm gonna go on and I do back extension reps. And then tomorrow I wake up with the worst feeling I've had in 6 months, and I'm now mad at you. What do you tell me?
Um, this program is not about solely the back extension and isolation, and that nothing works in a vacuum. This program is inherently more specifically focused on a mind body connection. So that means accepting exactly where you're at in order to have an honest communication with yourself of what your true ability is. Mind you, that this is something you've never trained before in your life. So that's like a pretty humbling and introspective perspective to have to take in this world filled of with fake people and everything being perfect on social media. Like everyone has this great life, right? So how could I be so bad at this one thing? And
Yeah.
so it's like an honest check-in with yourself. What is my ability? And so it's not going on the back extension and pumping out 30 reps and then wondering why you have the nerve pain the next day and then sending hate mail on your post. It's about looking inward because it's like you're never going to suffer more in reality than you do in your imagination, right? So it's like if you're suffering so badly from the result of low back training, then it's probably more of an internal battle of having to grapple with the fact that you have to start as a basic beginner.
Yeah. And please don't let it be dawned on you like Cody is someone familiar with the pain. And that doesn't, no matter how much you've been through it, it sucks to go through it. And the biggest dangers of pain is the tricks it plays. It makes you think it's permanent. It makes you feel like this is the first time. It makes you think that something must be wrong. There must be a new injury. And you may not be receptive to that message at the current moment, but it's going to stand true next week when you're feeling a little better. And our job isn't to, we're not going to be able to catch everybody at every stage. However, you know, I forgot to turn my notifications off. This is the reality of it. Just get a notification YouTube. The comment just says useless. So
Well,
he,
yeah, man,
he
you got
probably
a lot
tried
more
it.
fun than I
He
do.
tried, yeah. This one goes out to you, Stephen Smith on YouTube. People are gonna go through it and they have to learn. It's like I'm not the savior, dude. So if you tried it, and you didn't get it, understand that's a success. I've been an anti-salesman lately, and this is my anti-sales pitch, but it's honest. It's like there's one thing I can guarantee you by doing the program is that you're going to have a flare. That's my guarantee to you. So most people are like,
You could probably guarantee that without them doing the program too. So
yeah, that's true.
you're in the same
But you're
spot.
definitely, because the truth is, you sometimes don't know. You have to cross the line to know where the line is. And we're trying to finally learn where are the bounds of our capacity in our back? What can we do? What can't we do? So then we can reverse engineer the qualities and structural goals we want to work towards. But until you do that, you're guessing, you're plugging holes in an ever growing gap. You're just trying to do all these little whack-a-mole things and you don't actually know your problem. So I'm trying to help people realize what the problem is and what it isn't. The problem isn't your herniated disc in isolation. The reason it became chronic, and for most cases, again, it's not always absolutes, but most chronic pains don't have to do with the isolated injury. It's the overall trajectory that comes down to structure as well as the nervous system and the mental side of pain loops that happens over time. So much stuff goes into the back, but you know, it's not the sales pitch isn't join the program and be pain free in 8 weeks. It's join the program and have your first flare in the first 8 weeks. And that's literally part of the process is we're gonna have to teach you how to learn how to work with flare-ups. Because you see it all the time. Yesterday's call, we have the BBB Pro, not a sales pitch, but just true. We have 2 calls a week. You were in there yesterday with like a dozen people, and all we talked about was flare-ups. Some veteran members, so much better than before, currently on a flare up. You even had a little mini thing 2 days ago because you pushed a little bit too much and you learned. And so that's the truth of it is like, we don't want to do harm. We don't want to obviously push into stuff, but there's no lessons in avoidance. Pretending something exists just means you get no data now. It still exists, but you just get no information. And which means you're in the dark. And so we put light on it. There's pain there. There's going to be some, hard pill to swallow maybe of how long it might take or the true, it's not even timelines, just what you have to buckle up for. But it's real. And I think that's why we need zero sales here. There's zero convincing because it's going to make sense to the people who have done everything. And it won't feel perfect along the way, but we're just trying to really like get people directionally correct when it comes to starting. And the flare-ups are part of it, but they happen less and less. I've gotten a flare-up once a year over the past 2 years, and it's usually when something in my training is lacking still, some little quality, and the holistic wasn't very good, and I was traveling, sleep deprived, all the right dominoes are laid up for me. It takes a lot more. Back then I could just sneeze and it was like, ooh, got me. Now everything's got to be in place. And when it happens to me, man, I learn. And I've talked to you about it. My QLs feels crazy. I realize I have so much work still to do, or even understanding empathy of pain for the members. It's like the pain is not the enemy, as crazy as that sounds. It's a tool. And that's counter to what you feel when you go to the doctor. The treatments only treat pain as the problem. Oh, you're suffering with pain every day. Got it. They're not like hey, dude, I think your multifidus is weak. Like, get your back gains up, or you need to work on even emotional connections, somatics, and the pain reprocessing. Like, there's a whole subtopic we could get into, but it's there's you got no hope if you just go out there and go the traditional thing right now.
Talk about a tool too, because all of us have felt this where it's like you're alienated, like I'm young, I'm the only one who's going through this. People ask how your back is, and you're like, my leg's no, my back's fine. But it's like you have this group of people in the low back ability community where you can say anything, and usually there's somebody who's been through it and somebody
Always.
who is going through it. And then you're berated with positivity, which is literally the process you need to get through pain. You talked about the little disc bulge being, you know, just not comparing whatsoever to, maybe where my MRI is now, but the pain is the same. The pain is very real. And it's almost like because my spine looks so terrible on an MRI right now compared to where it did in 2012, doesn't make my 2012 experience any less painful. It just was, I have so much more experience and tolerance to deal with that now. And so now, like when I go into this program anticipating flare-ups, it doesn't scare me. It just means I'm on this upward trajectory, like the
Yep.
stock market.
Much.
You're going up and down, but you just keep going up. Um, and like that's the biggest thing I've learned from LBA, low back ability, is like this shit's gonna happen, but it's like you got the resources and the community and the roadmap to deal with it.
Yeah, and like that's a great way to put it. Just so people know, the goal isn't, hey, enjoy flare-ups for your whole life, and just you get more grateful for it. It's the flare-ups become less and less, and the length of them become less and less. They become less life altering. Like the last flare-up I had, Jordan, you're getting on the podcast real quick. Okay. The last flare up I had, I was hiding it almost for a couple days from the members. I'm like, I'm fraudulent. How could I hurt my back? Just like wrestling my girlfriend, like moving, doing something silly. And then my whole thing was messed up. I couldn't walk. I had nerve pain for real the first time in my life, like serious nerve pain, not just numbness, tingling, TV static. And and then I texted Jordan, who's the CEO of our company. He was there when I first herniated a disc. And Jordan, I was so down in the dumps 2 days into the flare up. What did I text you?
The company's yours, man. I'm done. Life is over, etc.
I said, Jordan, no, for real. We're gonna have a massive shift, Jordan. I'm gonna be having to, and I know it's gonna document it. I'm going to be all focused on this rebuild, fixing your back from scratch, because I thought I herniated everything. It's over for me. And I told him, Jordan, here are the keys. Here's the LLC. Here's my student loan debt. You have everything of mine now.
This was all like 4 a.m. too.
I was really in it. I texted all my employees, Robert Frost, like the yeah, my friends are my employees, but whatever. You guys get paid. Texting everyone like to the wind blows till I must fall the pain. I'm Robert Frost in this bitch. I'm really hurting. And the funny thing is, I opened up to people what was going on in the members. 2 days later, I was doing back extensions with 100 pounds, literally. And I
Yeah.
was like, how? Because the it was like 4 day span. Day one, pain. Day two, I'm signing my will, giving everyone everything. I'm skipping town. I'm also thinking, oh my God, have I misled 300,000 people to think that how am I not protected? Because it literally felt like I really did some damage. The next day, I slowly hobbled into the gym, got on the sled, warmed up things, and actually, by the contraction of training on the hips and the back, calmed down all the overactive spasms and contracted, like protective alarm system that is a lot of times what flare ups are. And all my muscles like calmed down to a normal state, and I could contract, and I got circulation, and I felt like 90%. The next day, I felt 99% and literally went super heavy just to see. And it was like fine after. And I was like, whoa,
One
flares
that
are different now.
Yeah, they're different, and that's where like even our leader has the same trials and tribulations that all of the injured back patients are going through, because it's like I've heard that story, and I thought about it this morning because I was telling you before we started this, I had a rough drive, 4 hour drive turned into a 12-hour drive, and I was like, same thing, toasted. And I thought exactly about what you said. So instead of clocking into work, I went right to the sled, and it sucked, but like I worked through it. And I think like your experience is like firsthand testimonial of what everybody receives here. It's like, oh no, you go through the same stuff. And like that's what's most relatable is like our Messiah is going through the same things, right? It's like your
Yeah.
capacity is one more robust than a lot of ours, but like it happens to the best of us.
Right. And especially, my life's not perfect. Like my recovery is not great, my sleep, I've built up the catalyst of injury, but even without that, in that time period, it's like I can tell you one thing from the inside scoop of a fitness influencer who knows fitness influencers, has been mentored by fitness influencers, and etc. Nobody really feels comfortable telling the absolute truth of their lowest lows when they're already at this image. Because I shared about my knee injury, and there was people who said, "You're not credible. How are you going to tell me how to get out of pain?" And I'm like, I knew this was going to come. But there was also 95% that were like, "Oh, this guy is actually more real than we knew real could be," because um, when you start promoting, "Hey, I have the answers for your problem," and then you say, "Oh, I have that problem," that's called real life. The other thing is called sales. Now, what I can tell you with full conviction is my life will never be revolved around the demise of my low back, and I'm going to the Olympics for sports. I'm free in all the ways that free means to me. Now, someone has different goals, they have a different starting point. It doesn't matter. I believe you can get free to the goals that you feel comfortable going after just because it's not determinate on perfection. It's not like that's a false sales tactic. Really, you don't have to be perfect that to have value. If anything, I've told so many people, dude, don't wait till you're fixed to post stuff because you have gems that I forgot. You have things that are so relatable when you're on day two that at day 2000, I kind of forgot. It's in my subconscious. I can't resonate. I can't help people.
Well, and that's the value of these like flare-ups, right? It's like,
Brings me right back.
yeah, it brings you right back and it makes you think like, helps you practice gratitude and it puts me back in this loop of like, all right, it's not too late to be what I might have been, right? It's like, okay, like, I've come so far, but like it's humble pie, right? Sorry, I keep getting texts. I'm trying to mute it. Um, but yeah, and I mean, like, there's such value in coaching people who are in the hardest stages, and you forget what those hardest stages were like because this program works so well. It's definitely helpful to
Yeah.
check in with yourself through a flare up.
Yeah, dude. And it's a better like goal anyways, to tell people, hey, you're never gonna deal with a back problem again in your life, which is a lie to some degree. Like everyone at some point feels a foot pain because something in one day in their life, everyone felt a back thing one day in their life. It just, we have bodies. So, or we could tell them, you may feel something at some point, but it doesn't mean anything. It's no longer the sign of destruction and decay, and you may feel a moment of pain, but it's going to be a fraction, like a 50th of the time frame, and it's probably going to be a tenth of the pain. It's like, yeah, I'll take that. Like, that's okay. I actually don't need to pretend like it's perfect and like,
Well, you said something the other day, which I totally got, but it was a departure from a lot of the in-depth advice you give. I think someone, maybe Nicole, had a flare up, and you just answered, "It's not real" in full cap. It's like, and I was like, "It's not real. I agree. It's just not real." And like, that's probably the least um sophisticated thing you've ever said.
yeah,
Have some good quotes, but I've had like little disky nerve feelings and and say to myself, I'm like, bro, it's not real. And
yeah.
it's not, man. And everyone touts the John Sarno book, which is literally, I don't know if it's weaponizing placebo or if it's real, but he has the whole
Mhm.
TMS concept where any pain you have is just a repressed emotion. And it
Yeah.
kind of coincides with that whole concept of like your nervous system can like do weird things. Doesn't mean you blew out a disc. Doesn't mean like you have a spasming back. Like it's not
Yeah.
real. Not real.
Yeah.
Like what's wrong?
And there's value in that, you know. And I know Nicole well. I've talked her through many flare-ups, and we're good friends. Like we get very close with that pro group. So I
Yeah.
would never open up to someone sends me an essay and just say, bro, it's not real. It could, if I don't know someone, it could be real. I don't know. Because you don't, some people like, hey, I have a herniated disc last week. I was doing Jefferson curls this week. It's like, oh yeah, you might have actually blew some out. I don't know.
Nicole's a soldier. I think she's very knowledgeable too and flew through
Yeah.
this. So I think like you had liberty to
Yeah.
not be misunderstood with Nicole.
Oh
But
yeah. Yeah. That's the funny thing. There's a lot of people in the program that are yoga instructors, personal trainers, already been pro athletes. So many people that, you know, could have an ego of what they think they know, but it's like they can listen to me because they know that even if they think I'm an expert in this, I'm not taking that stance of I know everything to know here. And I've never read the John Sarno book, and I have to, and The Way Out, and all those pain reprocessing things. Um, if it really is like a sort of almost all pain is somatic or repressed emotions, now this is where it's human nature. The pendulum swings, we talk about it. Everything must be this. You cut the string. Okay, it swings to the other side. Oh, wait, no, no, no. It must all be this because you literally see evidence of that. If you keep going long enough, pendulums always just hang. And so the thing about it that I hear all the time, I've worked with clients for over a year in person. They got so much progress measurably on their strength, but they still had pain. Then they go through that route and they're like, no, there is a serious thing of pain reprocessing. And I agree. After a couple of years, nervous system's altered, your firing patterns are altered, your emotional like connection with pain and how tension, all of that has to be affected. Somatic, psychological, all of it. The loop. Now here's where it's just human nature showing itself. Is I have chronic pain syndrome or hyperactivity and pain pathways that need reprocessing. Therefore, I don't have structural problems. Absolutely not possible.
yeah.
Even if the source of your problem was purely trauma induced and you became avoidant and couldn't move and flare ups only because of emotion, what did I just say though? You spent 5 years not moving, unable to twist, bend, and flare ups. It was because of emotion, but the end result's the same. You had a
Mhm.
back cast. You weren't moving. So you have structural deficiencies. So
Yeah.
even if you get out of pain because you addressed whatever the blockage is, whatever the connection is, that's still real. Address that.
Mhm.
Still get on the back extension because you could be pain free, but one misstep away from a bulge still. So it's so people are we're just primed. It takes every fight to not be and or, not be McGill Big Three or this brace or flex. It's like that's sales or that's just human nature showing the truth will never exist on those extremes. You know, physiological or only psychological, hit it all. We're completely comprehensive beings. There's no way to say this or that. And it's pointless to try.
That's just it, man. It's like I'd encourage everyone to pull the pendulum back up and let it keep swinging because like the more tools you collect,
True.
there's a lot of good information out there. Primary resources to train the low back. So that doesn't mean negate everything you've ever learned, but
Right.
um, I think of like this emotional repressive um, pain manifestation as just like another tool. It's like, oh, I got some nerve pain. Like, what's going on in my life emotionally? All
Mm-hmm.
right, I'm feeling pretty stiff. Like, let's get some blood flowing in the lower back. It's like
Yep.
it's neither or, but both.
Right. Right. And that's where, you know, that's what I hope we maintain. I don't know how big low back ability grows as a community hub and a like landing space for people stuck, not as a personal brand. However big it gets, my goal is just that we remain unbiased to the truth of like the influencing factors, what could be going on, and not have a system. Because as soon as you start going, this is my system, you're trying to fit all success into that system. Like I was saying earlier, oh, he had all these issues and now he's perfect. It's like, I don't even have to claim that. I'm not here pretending like I created something new under the sun. We just need to get the truth out and decipher that through the confusion and get people moving in the right direction. That will save lives. And you
Well, the
know,
truth is it's not that I'm fixed. It's like I just have such a deeper understanding of exactly what my issues are and how to get better with them,
yeah.
right? And like that's life, right? Like that's what we all want is to like better understand our faults and better emphasize our strengths.
And you're better this year than you were 2 years ago, and you know that in 2 years you'll be way better than you are right now. Like your ability is good. You can do a lot with your back. Like that's not, don't let that get lost in people, but it is still. How many members do we know that are still stuck in chronic pain that feel free though? They go through the flare-ups. It's not fun, but like their spirit will never break. They will, the only thing that can, the end is that you have the wrong GPS coordinate put in, which is when you don't understand these things, you can go down the route of avoidance, of treatment of pain alone. And what happens along that route? Drug addictions, surgeries with secondary effects that can happen, which require more, to serious depression, serious loss of everything in life, to suicide for some, or an absolute bane of existence that's terrible. I've seen it so many times with so many people, and I talk to people at different stages. And the only thing that is the direction they were put on. Didn't have clarity to any of this stuff.
Yeah, and that's why I use the scatter plot so much as a great example because it's like you offer the roadmap and it's a direction and it's like you're collecting data like oh I went too far in this direction, I went too far in that direction, but like as long as you have like you're
An
steering,
aim.
yeah, an aim, it's like you start to find that line of regression and you're going the right way and you narrow in the data and that's where I'm like so grateful that I'm have a narrow corridor where I know where I'm going. It took me months and months, but it's
It
like
used to be anything, right?
yeah, you bring it together
Yeah, dude.
and it's cool. And you do that. You offer guidance through that. Like I've been beginning to offer guidance, and like you see these leaders who are still in chronic back pain, but are like some of the biggest resources in the larger low back ability group. And it's like you know, just valuable information. And it's not that it's like a physiological, clinical based background. It's like empathy.
Yeah, dude.
And you know, the four levels of the back extension, there's very concrete advice you can offer people, but
Yeah,
it's like training wisdom, man. There's no, the spine is your life, like quite literally.
yeah,
So it's like when you become in tune with that, you become in tune with how to interact with other people, how to help other people.
yeah, man. When I started focusing on the low back, I used to focus more on speed, posting, and social media when I was a 20th of the size. I started on the low back, and I'm like, the tissue's the issue. I'm gonna tell people how to train the low back. So simple. It's gonna help a lot of people. There'll be some things I can't help with. I won't even touch it. And then I just met individuals. It was no longer social media and it was like actually meeting people and talking. And then I started the coaching where I had relationships with them and just realized like my heart cares a lot more than I thought I would be able to at this point. And like what I'm getting at with this is it went from this simple, oh, I'm gonna start help people with the low back. It's not a big deal to, oh shit, what have I gotten myself into? Like one, I picked a training subfield that's as close to medicine that is not medicine. And it's like every day I'm like, let me not get sued. Let me not get sued. Let me find the right way to work within the system and not do too much. And then also like, man, people's lives are at stake. I'm talking to so many people at such crazy rock bottoms, and there's so much I don't know. The more I learn about this, the more I realize I never had a clue fully about the grand problem. And now that I learn more, I realize it can never be me as there's no messiah, there's no guru. It can't be. Because dude, it's gonna take 1,000 of us committed to put resources in a flow that can save probably most people from the loop, from the real route for most things. And even then, it's like, so I used to be like, oh shit, overwhelmed, but then I just gave into it of what better route? Like what else is more humbling as a professional, as an empathetic person, as a coach? And it lines up that because the problem's so big, I don't have to be, money hungry, and I'll be okay. And I could try to make it like really people first. And it's scary sometimes trying to learn more because I'm like, makes me feel like a bad coach sometimes when 3 times in a call I have to say, I don't know. But that's truth. And that's where you find answers. You have to admit you don't know. So eventually you can know. And
Yeah,
it's
well, I think it also makes it seem like a process that we're going through together, with you.
Mhm. It's
Um,
true. Well, yeah.
yeah, 100%. And it's offers like a more human element to the whole thing, which I
Mhm.
think is greatly appreciated. And I said this in the call yesterday. It's like there's a system, whether it was deliberate or not, that's been in place to empower the people who've moved through the program. And I've already experienced that, being an LBA leader and everything. It's like you can learn a lot through teaching. Uh,
More. You can learn more.
More, yeah.
Literally.
My
Yeah.
brother just walked in. He's my primary
Caregiver.
pupil. He was a caregiver for most of my low back blowouts, but I've slowly tried to integrate the split squat into his post biking routine. So
Oh yeah, nice, nice, nice. He's your occupational therapist. He's the one
right.
that gurney you around back in the day.
He is actually a trained psychologist, so he can relate to the emotional side of
Shit.
it.
Intertwined, dude. This has to be interdisciplinary. So I like the more we help people, the more unqualified I feel, which is fine. But there's a role for so many people. If you have the scars, you have wisdom. If you have the credentials, then maybe you have expertise to explain the wisdom. And like it's all needed. So it's got to be a group effort. So this was a really cool talk. The tangible takeaway, get on the back extension. I think that's enough for people. Like I said, I've done these talks before, and you'd be surprised how much someone needs to hear exactly this dialogue. There's no failure when it's authentic on this. This is really the talks we have weekly on our group calls with other people. And um, lowbackability.com, you can see more stuff. That's my plugin. Cody Horn on Instagram. He's starting the journey of learning the socials, and you're gonna have more followers than me if you keep going. Literally, you have more knowledge than I do, so you could kill it there. And yeah, dude, that'll be it for me. Do you have any parting words?
I had three quotes. I've already said two of them in candid conversation, but the one thing that I take through this program is our life is what our thoughts make it, right? So I will get out of back pain. I will make the Olympics, whatever. Like manifest destiny, and everybody in the group's there to reinforce that. So that's
Yeah,
the
dude.
most beautiful component of this whole thing. Um, and
Yeah.
and I
There's,
believe it wholeheartedly.
if there's one thing I've taught in the program, it's delusion. And that because I realized delusion is like, you know, I thought I was gonna have some cute saying, dreams and illusion. I don't know. Delusion is just basically like a reality you can't see yet and it doesn't make sense. But when you're
Can't think it.
20,
How can you do it?
right, you'll never exceed your belief level. And it's like when you're 20 something years old and no one can understand you anyways, and you're in a predicament that doesn't already make sense, it's like this seems a little delusional for this reality. I just reached a screw it point. This is when Jordan knew me. I slept on his couch because I was a homeless college athlete with herniated disc and no money for treatment. And I literally was broke. And I was a personal trainer, but couldn't even train. I couldn't even bend over. I couldn't do anything. So it's like to have a living and people grateful for me and I lead anything, like I had 300 followers. I'll risk my whole career to say this whole thing is up to you how you want it to go. I tell clients that I don't care. Like my own dad has herniated discs. He won't let me help him. He's like, "Well, what do you know about herniated discs?" It's like you don't know about my genetics. I'm like, I have your genetics. What are you talking about? Stop it. Well, you're young, and I'm like, yeah, I'm young, but I felt old. Like I've been worse than, and like there's certain people that he believes. I'm calling him out. I don't think he listens to my stuff. But he believes it's dangerous to tell people this because you're getting their hopes up. And I'm like, man, I could tell you one thing for sure. Somebody on their last whim, hearing you completely dismiss their hopelessness and say, I don't care what you tell me, you can get there. I wish someone told me that when I needed it. And that's what keeps people alive, that keeps people going, that keeps their light bulb flickering, and like there's no reason for me to be where I'm at in any sense, professionally or like physically. There will be no reason for me to be an elite athlete. None of it makes sense. And that has carried over into members being like, yeah, I got 20 years of pain. I won't be on the 22nd year though. And funny enough, there's a lot of stories out there of people who did it. I don't think they are big on social, but I've miracles happen of healing. And if the
I'm one
world
of them, man. I spent 15 years, the past two. I'm like, wish I had this information when I was in my 20s, because like I'd have done much greater things. It's wild.
right, well, maybe you're destined for even huger. If I got my goal when I was 17, I'd be a pro soccer player overseas, some Division 2 league somewhere, and no one knows who I am, and I'm thinking I made it. So I'm grateful for everything that didn't work out, honestly. I think you have a lot coming. So cool, dude. I appreciate it. Thanks for bringing it home with the most core, real driving factor of it all. It's like you got to have heart and you got to have the fight in you. And if you're alive, what else would you want to do? Don't be a walking corpse, It's just not, doesn't help anything. As much as the pain can trick you, you gotta believe that it's even possible. So this is a cool chat. Thank you for the time. I know I made you a little bit late,
Oh,
but
you're good. This has been great. I appreciate it. This is what I live for, so it's good stuff.
yeah, the members, all the friends we got in there are gonna love it. And I think you're probably gonna get blasted with messages from Instagram. People are gonna really like this. So it'll be
Cool.
up probably today or tomorrow, YouTube, Spotify, wherever. So
Right
thanks,
on,
bro.
man. Well, it's
Sick.
always a pleasure. See you next Zoom.
Yep. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.